Welcome back to a new deep dive on Aladdin's global adventure. And today, we're going to focus on this dramatic company, Luckin Coffee.
Oh, yeah, dramatic is a good word for it.
I think so.
It's been quite a ride for them, hasn't it?
Obviously, from near collapse because of that huge financial scandal to now surpassing Starbucks in China based on revenue in Q2 of 2023.
Yeah, it really is a comeback story.
Yeah, it's amazing. But how did they manage to do it? What were the key elements that led to this revival?
You know what's so interesting about this is that it wasn't just like a clever marketing campaign or a single trendy product. Luckin had to completely overhaul how they did things.
Right.
Rebuild trust and really fundamentally change their strategy to reach this level of success.
Let's rewind to the beginning for a sec. Luckin's initial model was all about disrupting the coffee scene.
Absolutely. They went head-to-head with Starbucks by undercutting prices, focusing on digital ordering, and using takeaway kiosks to cut down on those expensive storefront rents.
Right.
It was a pretty bold move that initially seemed to work. They had this like meteoric rise.
Even got to an IPO.
And then boom, the 2020 financial fraud scandal.
Oh, yeah.
It must have been devastating.
It was like an earthquake for the company. Delisting from the stock exchange, tons of skepticism. Investors were wondering if they'd even make it.
Right.
Share prices fell from $50 to basically nothing.
It's
They're looking
like
real.
It was a wild ride. But even before that scandal, their model might have been a little vulnerable, especially with the pandemic coming.
You're absolutely right. The pandemic forced a lot of businesses to change. And that pressure, along with the scandal, basically made Luckin transform completely.
Okay, so how did they deal with this and come back stronger? Was it just all coconut lattes and social media hype?
Well, those things definitely played a role. But the real secret to the turnaround was how they addressed those foundational issues. It was like they did some serious internal surgery before revealing that external makeover.
So it was less of a quick fix and more of a complete system overhaul. What were some of the things they did to rebuild their reputation? First, they tackled the financial fraud straight on. There was no hiding it. They negotiated with the SEC, settled lawsuits, cleared overseas settlements. They were serious about breaking from the past and getting that trust back.
It sounds like they knew transparency was key to fixing their image. But a lot of times new leadership comes in during a crisis. Did that happen at Luckin?
Interestingly, no. They did get new investments, with Centurium Capital becoming a major shareholder at almost 40%. And they gave over $700 million US. But they didn't change the management.
That's interesting. It seems like those new investors had faith in the existing team.
Yeah, and that decision really shows their dedication to real change. They restructured the company, focused on changing the company culture, and really defined their mission and values. Things like creating moments of luck, inspiring a passion for a better life, and building a world-class coffee brand became super important to them.
So they weren't just focused on the bottom line. They wanted to redefine Luckin as a whole. But how did they make sure those past issues wouldn't happen again?
This is where things get really cool. They took it a step further by using blockchain technology for all their financial and operational data, meaning all information was out in the open, making it a lot harder for future misconduct.
Wow, that's a bold move.
Yeah.
Seems like they're committed to that transparency. Did they make any internal changes to motivate their team and get everyone on board with this new direction?
They did, and it was a smart move. They offered stock options to over 300 core employees, giving them ownership and aligning everyone with the company's success.
Right, because when employees have skin in the game like that, it can really push them to do their best. So they addressed their internal problems and worked to prevent new ones. But how did they turn that into market success and ultimately surpass Starbucks?
Well, their strategic changes were just as impressive as those internal ones. They went all in on the Chinese coffee market, seeing its huge growth potential.
Right, and I know coffee consumption in China is still pretty low.
Yeah.
Compared to the other countries. Did they see that as a good thing?
Absolutely. They knew that the average Chinese person drinks about 10 cups a year, which is way lower than in lots of other places. This was a massive opportunity for a company like Luckin.
So they weren't just trying to bounce back, they were going for market dominance. How did they secure their place in such a fast-growing market?
They made some really smart choices. First, they went for vertical integration, which meant controlling more of their supply chain. They now control about 40% of China's coffee bean imports, including a huge 60% of all Brazilian imports.
Wow, that's a serious commitment to their supply. But importing beans is just one part of it. What about the rest of the coffee production process?
Oh, they've got that covered too. They own roasting factories, aiming to hit a total capacity of 150,000 tons by 2025. This level of control means they can keep their quality high and consistent, while relying less on outside suppliers.
So they were thinking long-term about every part of the process. But we can't forget about the actual product itself, those coconut lattes and all the hype they got.
You're right, product innovation was a big factor too. They've been super productive, creating over 100 new products every year and running over 30 co-branding campaigns this year alone.
And that coconut latte was a smash hit, selling over 2 million cups a day. They really tapped into what Chinese customers like.
They definitely understand their customers. They're not afraid to experiment and make drinks for local tastes, which has been a big part of their success.
They also rebranded to Luck in Your Hand. What was the idea behind that?
That was a clever move. The new brand is about empowerment and effort, saying that you create your own luck. It's a small but important change from the idea of luck just being given to you.
I can see how that would appeal to younger, ambitious people. It almost sounds like they're trying to be a brand with that power of belief. Like Coca-Cola.
It's a big goal for sure, but you're right to compare them. They are targeting a younger audience, and they present themselves as professional, youthful, fashionable, and healthy.
It's a very carefully crafted image, and it seems to be working. But even with a great product and strong brand, they still have to deal with competition, right? The Chinese coffee market is getting crowded, especially with companies like Coconut Coffee growing so fast.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next chapter in Luckin's story, navigating a tougher market, price wars, and the changing world of coffee in China.
Now things are getting really interesting. Let's jump into that in part 2 of our deep dive.
So we talked about Luckin's internal changes and their new strategies, but like you said, the coffee scene in China is always changing. New companies like Coconut Coffee are popping up, and they're really shaking things up with their expansion and pricing.
Yeah, Cody's growth has been impressive for sure. They've already hit 10,000 stores globally, and they're not afraid to offer lower prices. Is this kind of competition a threat to Luckin?
It's definitely something they have to think about. But it's important to remember the difference between online and offline business models. Online, you often have one big winner, but offline allows for a more diverse market with multiple brands.
So you're saying there's room for multiple coffee giants in China, even with Coody being so aggressive?
Exactly. Think of it like restaurants. You have all sorts of successful ones, even within the same type of food. The offline world lets them coexist. It's funny, Luckin actually calls Coody's competition the Blue Army effect.
The Blue Army. That sounds intense. What do they mean by that?
It might sound scary, but they actually see this competition as a positive thing. It keeps them on their toes, makes them innovate, and ultimately helps them stay on top of their game.
So having a rival like Coody is actually good for Luckin.
Absolutely. Competition can be a powerful motivator. It pushes both companies to make better products, better service, and just a better experience overall. It's a win-win for customers because everyone's trying harder.
But this competition has also caused a price war. How is Luckin dealing with that?
They're being very strategic. Instead of just trying to have the lowest prices, they're focusing on providing value. They know that real success isn't built on discounts alone.
So it's about offering quality, a good experience, and a brand people connect with. They're playing the long game.
Exactly. Luckin wants to build a business that lasts, not just win a short-term battle. Some people are even saying we might see a duopoly in China, like Coca-Cola and Pepsi.
That's an interesting idea. Do you think a Luckin-Coody duopoly is likely?
It could happen. Both companies have strong brands, big networks, and loyal customers. But I think it's important for both of them to avoid getting too fixated on each other.
So they shouldn't just focus on battling each other and forget about the bigger picture.
Right. In the end, the key to success in any market is focusing on the customer, understanding what they need, exceeding expectations, and always changing to stay ahead. That's what creates lasting growth.
It's about serving the customer, not just fighting the competition. Makes sense. Now, Luckin has also started expanding internationally. What can you tell us about their global ambitions?
They've already taken some steps. They're in Singapore with around 47 stores, and they're already a top 3 coffee brand there. They're also looking at Malaysia and even thinking about the U.S. market.
Wow, those are big goals.
Yeah.
Do you think they have what it takes to compete in those markets? Especially the U.S., where coffee is already so huge.
That's the big question. The Chinese market is still pretty new when it comes to coffee. Overseas markets, especially the U.S., are a lot tougher.
So they can't just do what they did in China. They need to adjust for each market.
Definitely. They also need to be ready for the challenge of building their brand in new places. It takes time, money, and a good strategy to succeed in a new country.
And they'll be going up against some really big names in coffee, like Starbucks, which is everywhere.
Exactly. They'll need to stand out, show what makes Luckin different, and offer something special to customers who already have a lot of choices.
It's a tough task, but they've already proven they can handle challenges. Maybe they really can pull off this global expansion.
I think so. Their story has been amazing, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next. Will they become the next big coffee company in the world? Only time will tell.
So we've seen how Luckin bounced back from that scandal, changed how they work, won over the Chinese market, and now they're aiming for global success.
It's a story about resilience, adaptation, and strategy.
And for our listeners, think about this. What can we learn from Luckin's comeback? How can we use their ideas about innovation, customer focus, and determination in our own lives and work?
Those are great questions to think about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Luckin Coffee. We'll be back next time with another exciting story from the world of business. Okay, so we've really uncovered the secrets to Luckin Coffee's comeback. From almost going under to beating Starbucks in China, it's been crazy. But as we've talked about, the coffee industry never sits still, both in China and around the world.
That's true. Luckin can't just relax now. They have to stay quick, innovative, and focused on their customers to handle the challenges ahead and keep growing.
So what are some of the things that will decide if Luckin succeeds, both in China and maybe even globally?
Well, in China, they need to pay attention to what customers want. That younger generation, who are a lot of their customers, they're known for always wanting the newest thing. Luckin needs to be ready for those changing tastes to stay popular.
So they have to keep making new drinks, be ahead of the trends, and maybe even start some new trends themselves.
Exactly. They also can't forget about the competition. New companies will show up, and existing ones like Coody will keep pushing. Luckin needs to stay sharp and strategic to keep their market share.
No room for getting lazy. But what about their goals to go global? What will determine their success in places like Singapore, Malaysia, and even the U.S.?
Going international is a whole different game. They'll need to really research each market to understand how people drink coffee there, what they like, and who they're already competing with. What works in China might not work somewhere else.
So they can't just copy and paste their China strategy. They have to adapt to each place.
Absolutely. And they have to be ready for the challenge of building their brand in a new place, where people don't know them as well. That takes time, resources, and a smart plan.
And they'll be up against huge names in coffee.
Yeah.
Like Starbucks, which is basically everywhere.
Right. They'll have to stand out, show what makes Luckin special, and give those customers a reason to choose them when they already have so many options.
A big task, but they've already shown they can do it. Maybe Luckin really can become a global success.
I think they could. Their story has been amazing. And it'll be exciting to see what they do next. Will they become the next coffee giant? I'll have to wait and see.
Well, our deep dive into Luckin Coffee has been quite a journey. We saw how they dealt with a major scandal, changed everything, won over China, and now they want to take on the world.
It's a story that shows the power of not giving up, being flexible, and thinking strategically.
And for our listeners, here's something to think about. What can we learn from Luckin's amazing comeback? How can we use their ideas about innovation, customer focus, and never giving up in our own lives and businesses?
Those are great questions to ask ourselves.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Luckin Coffee. Until next time, happy investing, and as always, we wish you luck in your investing journey.